This is Bobby Neat, author of Conspiracy of Secrets, Her Pursuit of Genealogical Records, Part 2.
I left you with last time when I was concentrating on 3 possible women to be the chosen surrogate mother of the baby of H.H. Asquith and Venetia Stanley. I'm now concentrating on 3 possible women. Each had A as her middle initial, and they had been Applegates at birth. Luckily, one of them I could rule out straight away, as her birth certificate had been easy to obtain. She'd been Mary Alfreda and was probably too old, and had been born in Ely. The most likely Mary A. Applegate was 33. This was the right age according to the wording on the gravestone. She was also single and a parlour maid. In the data, she was recorded as living in Odstall in Nottingham. Her birthplace was recorded as a town in Norfolk. As I had difficulty tracking down her birth certificate, I began to think she must be the right Applegate. Had she purposely hidden her tracks? The last Mary Ann on my list had been born at 22 Union Street in Carlisle, which did not seem to fit in with anything I knew. The town was not near Liverpool, and I couldn't recall stepfather ever having connections with this place. However, her birth certificate arrived without trouble. She'd been named after her own mother, Mary, whose maiden name was Holmes. The surname didn't jog any memories, but then, why should it? Her birthday was 11th of October, so this fitted in with my supposition that Home Granny's birthday had been in the autumn. But there was one worrying detail that didn't make sense. She'd been born in the year 1870. If the gravestone writing were to be believed, she should have been born in 1867 or 68. This would make her 44 in 1912. Old for a first-time mother, I thought. Even 35 was considered dangerously old to give birth in those days. Alfred, the mother of this Mary Ann, had been a cotton warper. This detail made me a little more hopeful. At least there was some sort of connection with the cotton trade. A cotton warper didn't sound much of a job. Had he been a labourer? I turned my attention to the box to see who'd registered the birth. There was no signature, just a small cross. So was this grandmother of the great Louis T. illiterate? Surely this could not be the right family. I must have the wrong Applegates. This Mary Applegate was the wrong age, and why was one parent illiterate? I needed professional help. My genealogical expert decided that there was only one way to be sure that Mary from Carlisle was my Applegate, and that was to rule out the parlour maid. But he also failed to find her birth certificate, so now the only way to find my Mary Ann was by elimination. We needed to check when each of them had died, so we trawled through all the heavy boards at Middleton Street Record Office to find the Mary Ann Applegates who died before 1963, which was when my home granny passed away. This strategy led us on to a definitive answer. The parlour maid from Odstall in Nottinghamshire had died in a workhouse in 1924. From these details we traced her family birth certificate, which recorded her birth year as 1859. So this Mary Ann had led us a merry dance, because in 1901 she'd pretended she was 10 years younger than she really was. This left me with the Applegate who had an illiterate mother and had been born in Carlisle in 1870. Now I could look at the 1901 census details with new eyes. Previously, I'd found a Mary Ann Applegate of the right age who was born in Carlisle while she was living in somewhere called St Anne's on the Sea, and she was recorded as a sick nurse. I remembered Mum's justification of why stepfather had been a fussy eater and acted so spoilt. He'd been this much longed for baby, as he'd arrived years after his mother's attempts to have a child. My mum always waved her arms and said, "Oh, it must have been so exciting. What a thrill." As I recalled my story, my mind moved into overdrive. I could see the tale from a different angle. Maybe the Stanleys, or even the Asquiths, were well aware that their illegitimate son's replacement mother might be seen elderly for a first-time mother. I was still confused, as according to her gravestone, she was 44 in 1912, while according to the census, she would have been 42. Did they create this longed-for baby yarn for Mary Ann to tell to her neighbours? Would this satisfy inquisitive eyes and ears? Of course, there are lots of other exciting research that needed to be done, as I realised my childhood was far from normal. And let me just finish with another section from my book. Lurking in my childhood were suspicions. What was I uneasy about? I don't know. There'd always been mysteries, things I knew not, things that were not to be asked. The mantra of childhood was never to question, and slowly this secrecy drifted into my maturity. But there always lurked those dark suspicions. Suspicions too deep to raise, too disturbing to examine. So why disturb the calm? Little did I know when I was 5 that 50 years later I would be forced to confront my fears and start delving into the lives of others.